guys? It is your boy, Young Nicholas.
Got Jiggity Jack here.
And we're the co-hosts of the Jamify podcast, baby. We just want to take the time to say thank you and a shout out to the BSV Jamify community. Without you guys, it would be a very lonely road. If you haven't already, we'd appreciate you extra if you subscribe to the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you're reminded every single time we drop an amazing podcast.
Without further ado, let's get
into it.
Mr. Da Silva.
How we doing?
I'm all right.
Rui, right?
Rui.
Rui?
Yeah.
Rui.
Awesome.
I'm trying. Rui. Oh, okay. I see you guys. I could only see myself.
Oh, nice. You got it?
Yeah.
Cool, man.
You guys, brothers, no?
Pretty much.
No, we're pretty much. We're not related, but yeah. But to formally introduce ourselves, my name's Nico, also known as Young Nicholas on Twitter and Instagram, and this is my co-host Jack.
How you doing?
I'm all right, thank you.
Yeah. First off, we just want to say thank you for joining us on the second episode of the Jamify podcast. From our research on you, it seems that you have a lot of experience in the music industry, from owning your own record label and having the #1 hit single in the UK and Portugal. To start things off, why don't you just give us a little background on where you're from and how you got started in the music?
Well, I'm originally from Portugal.
Okay.
And I started in the music in the late 80s, early 90s.
Okay.
And as a sound engineer for a local talent in Portugal and playing as well bass on a local kind of rock band.
Okay.
Didn't venture much then from just rehearsal and then from there I just moved on to couldn't really find the members to have a band, so ended up getting rid of my amp and the bass guitar and getting a drum machine and a sampler.
Gotcha.
Wow.
And start making kind of house beats and techno.
So you really start off from the live performance scene and like playing with like acoustically in a band and performing, and then you kind of switched over to the more producing side of things?
Yeah, a little bit, but I mean, we didn't really perform that many shows. It was just like kind of trying to find band members was kind of difficult that were kind of committed to really do something more serious than just like kind of like intimate shows. So
Right.
we just kind of like I discovered electronic. I was fascinated by electronic music. I was listening to a lot of Kraftwerk and early Brian Eno stuff, and then just start listening to electronic music that was coming out of Chicago and from the UK.
Oh, wow.
And kind of figured out the machines that I needed and started acquiring machines.
What program did you first start using with DAW?
The first DAW was called Music X, and that was on Commodore Amiga.
Nice.
What was that?
It was Commodore Amiga.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never
It
heard
was
of that.
very, very old, but I remember seeing people using some sequences on a Spectrum, Sinclair Spectrum, and then I had a Commodore Amiga, so that's what I could. I found a sequencer for that, and then from there I had like an 8-track tape machine that I was using to connect to it, so I could have like longer recorded because the sequencer really only sequenced like synthesizers.
Oh, gotcha.
And then from there moved on to Atari. You running Cubase and Notator Creator. Then went to Washington, I think in early 92, and do a session with Deep Dish, and they were using Logic, and I ended up buying Logic version 1.8. That was my first Logic.
Oh, wow.
And it's been Logic since then, yeah. So
that's kind of where we got started in. We make hip hop beats, and we started.
Okay.
Yeah. So go back to the day when you discovered that your song became a #1 hit single. What was going through your head, and what were you feeling then?
I mean, there was a long build up. So that song, I done it, I think maybe the year before. And it was kind of like it was had like kind of this. I just actually came across the tape with the original demo about, I think, not this week, last week, not this week, but so the previous week, and I've just transferred it to my computer. So eventually I'm going to kind of share a little bit of it on somewhere on social media maybe, and it's very similar to the original to the version that everybody knows. But even that tape, I was kind of, when I went home, I was like fixated listening to it over and over and over. It's just kind of got like some sort of magic in the track. And from there, we kind of did some test pressings on vinyl, send it to Ibiza to a few DJs that I knew at the time, the Polo Confold and a couple of them. And they stopped playing the record in Ibiza. That was summer of '99. And I think 99, no, summer of 2000. And then, so I did a record in 99, yeah, the summer of 2000. That's when I started putting the record out, selling promos, because that was the fourth release on my label, Kismet Records. So by the end of the summer, there was just mayhem. People are coming back from Ibiza, calling Radio and asking to play the record on the radio, and nobody knew what the record was if they weren't in Ibiza. So people are just going nuts with it.
Damn.
And we were pressing a couple of more some promos, and the promos, I think we did first batch of promos, maybe 300, and we were selling them like, I don't know, maybe £3 from the distributor to the shops, and the shops were selling them at £30 because there was none. Wow. And those days there was no file sharing, there was no CDs.
Yeah.
So everybody was kind of like trying to find that record. So people were going with trying to find it, they couldn't find it, and as soon as they would see it in the shop, they were like selling it super expensive.
Wow.
And
wait,
then,
so were they selling them through vinyls or cassette tapes?
No, we were selling for vinyl on vinyl shops, so here in London.
Okay.
And that went all the way till close to Christmas. Then some big labels started, like major labels started inquiring. They wanted to sign the record, and eventually end up signing the CD rights of the record to a big label that allowed them to kind of like scale it up and sell. I don't know, probably they sold, I don't know, 500,000 CDs or something like that.
Wow.
But that was at the on the release. I don't know even the total afterwards. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was crazy. The record went to the playlist on Radio 1, and it was like the most played record for like 3 months or 4 months, something like that, in the UK.
Did you have a feeling while you're creating it, like, oh, like I really got something here, or were you just more, just kind of focused?
Yeah, there was. We were like kind of, the record was magnetic in terms of that everybody that I would play to, they wanted to hear it again. Like as soon as the record finished, can you play that again? So it's kind of got that kind of something in it that is, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like the frequencies kind of maybe they align in a way that's make people wanted to hear it again.
Right.
And it still has that, because many years afterwards, I think by the time I was living in Ibiza in the 2010, I remember being at some party in the morning and some kids were there, like teenagers, and we were playing records. I was DJing at this kind of villa party, and I played that record, and people were asking the same reaction. Kids that were probably 3 or 4 when the record came out. We were listening to it, and they were like, "Oh, hey, what's this record?" So kind of like has never lost that kind of.
So it's a timeless.
Yeah. In a way, now it's become timeless, because this year I've just been again. Everything started opening, parties are happening, and technology now allows you to kind of split the stems out of a master to a degree that it's reasonable for you to create a bootleg. Mm-hmm. So there's kind of a crazy amount of bootlegs at the moment that are getting played from all sorts of styles of DJs. One of the most kind of successful is Solomon, and it's just I see a lot of people listening to the song again, to continue to listen to the song. It's been a spike for sure this summer.
What do you mean?
Wow.
What do you mean by when you say like bootlegs? Is that just like someone replaying or remixing your song, or?
Yeah, they basically load up the song into some software. You can separate the vocal, the bass, the drums, and the keys.
Oh,
You can extract the chords, and then you create your own style. Usually, you change the drums, you make it more
Right.
current, whatever your style of music is. So you
Sampling.
might be. Yeah, there's been some even the hip hop stuff, so different tempos. There's some more trancey, some more kind of bass house, some more EDM, and then sometimes become successful. They end up replacing the vocal and having a new singer and end up
Right.
becoming an official release. But usually starts as a tool that the DJ done to play for in his gigs, and then starts giving it away to other people, and it just catches fire.
Wow. So along with your single when it blew up, you're also your label, your independent label, is Kismet, right?
Yeah,
That was also getting recognition for being a successful independent label.
yeah.
Can you explain the reasons for starting your own record label?
Well, that was actually my second label. My first label
Oh.
I started back in Portugal was Chaos Records.
Okay.
Because at the time there was not really a big dance scene worldwide, because the dance scene, this independent dance scene as we know it now, was nascent all around the world. It was a little bit more advanced in Chicago and Detroit and New York, but it wasn't all the other countries. There was nothing. So we kind of started the scene in Portugal, like everybody was doing it at the time all around the world. And I had a band called Underground Sound of Lisbon, and one of our first releases was So Get Up, and that ended up becoming a massive record in the New York club scene in the early 90s as well.
So Get Up.
Yeah, that record still is again, it's timeless. You can still listen to it now.
right.
I was listening to Touch Me yesterday. I was
Yeah.
vibing to that. I loved it.
You should check Underground Sound of Lisbon, So Get Up. There's I think that record is got the Guinness Book of Record of the most sampled a cappella of all time.
Wow.
It's crazy.
The most, really?
A sampled a cappella, yeah. It's
Wow.
nuts. It's like a poem of a guy talking about going crazy and stuff like that.
That's sweet.
And
So you started you did Chaos Records in Portugal.
Yeah,
and then
I started with two partners, and then personal reasons. I kind of I had a lot more success always outside Portugal than in Portugal, mostly because Portugal is quite a small country, and the scene was very, very nascent there. And eventually I moved to London at the late 90s, and decided to sell my label in Portugal, my part of the label to my partners. And when I arrived in the UK, I did the same. I wanted to release music and not restricted by anyone else. So I started a new label here. I had some contacts for all the manufacturing and distribution. So reached out to people that I knew in the industry and set up a label, and created about 5 releases, which is kind of what you needed to start as a plan of releases, where Touch Me was already included in there. And then we started releasing the records at the beginning of '99.
Wow.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So were you also reaching out and finding other talent and DJs and producers and getting them to come in with you, or were you did you create the label for just like your own sake of releasing and having your freedom?
Yeah, I created to have my own freedom, but of course, to being close friends with some other DJs and producers, we ended up doing some collaborations that ended up on the label.
Okay.
And sometimes people would be like really fans of the label, reach out, and I feel like the record was good, and they would like to help the kind of people kickstart their careers or something.
Right.
Then I would release those records. But recently, mostly everybody kind of is the barrier to release records has become almost non-existent, because of you don't need to manufacture a product. It's quite easy for you to upload to all the digital outlets. So it doesn't make any sense to continue doing the same. So I use it mostly to release my own stuff.
Right.
You know.
Gotcha.
Okay. So you've been around the music industry for a little bit. What would you say the biggest problem is within the music industry? If there
today is
current
is the fact that the creators don't get paid correctly. It's not a transparent process. It's a very slow, archaic process with a lot of middlemen and a lot of places where the funds kind of disappear.
Yeah.
I mean, that's number one. Number two is the fact that most artists, when they start, of course, they're young and unaware of some of the more kind of like sharp practices that exist in the industry, and they end up surrendering rights that they not necessarily need to, or it's not, and then just a few years later they end up regretting it. There's been a massive court case here in the UK now, which has been settled with Quartet, which might have lots of implications because it's open a precedent, and he has to do with that, with the fact that he signed a deal when he was quite young, didn't really he understood how to make beats, didn't really understood the business side of it.
Yeah.
And getting a manager does not necessarily imply that you might even still be protected from these things, because the manager incentive is not necessarily the artist incentive.
Yeah. So it's like they sign away their masters, right?
Yeah.
So, where they don't own their music. And they get it.
I mean, everybody from Taylor Swift to the most underground person, they all regret the deals. It's crazy. Even Prince, the reason why he was wandering around with the slave written on his face, people, because he wouldn't really speak at the time, was because he was at his protest. And the reason why he gave up his name is because to get out of the contract, he needed his name was connected. But if he had no name, then there was kind of a loophole for him to escape the contract.
You see, the music industry went from vinyl, that's CDs to streaming. Where do you think it's headed next? Do you think Web3 is the future? Music NFTs are the future of music?
I think that they can definitely create some sort of. I think that there will definitely be some sort of something that will be happening with NFTs that will help artists and creators, where you can surrender master. You can. It's just you'll be able to track and have immediate payments. You'll be able to agree on royalties. You'll be able to kind of be paid that automatically without having to chase deals, because in the traditional music industry, especially the old days, you will get paid twice a year. And if you're releasing a lot of music, especially if you're an underground artist, to small labels, all that process becomes cumbersome for the people who have to account to you, and the people that need to chase the money. It just becomes a headache, and then a lot of the money ends up in big, massive societies of copyright. That money doesn't go anywhere; it's still sitting there.
Do you see any problems with NFTs right now, or do you see anything that needs to be have more attention on, or because I see what you're doing?
I mean, the problem is that we haven't figured out exactly how to kind of trade it outside this, of course, this kind of like buzz that exists around the technology, and create like mini bubbles here and there in different fields. But I think that as we become more kind of changed, as we start realizing that digital files have value attached to it, and that value kind of can be controlled by you as it progresses in business. I think that the NFTs will have a stronger play in this whole process, but I don't think we've figured how this all this is going to work. At the moment, it's just all big science experiments here and there. You can create. I mean, I've got some ideas that I've been trying to explore for many years, and now with NFTs, maybe I'll be able to do some stuff like that. Yeah. But I think it's still a very nascent industry. We haven't even settled for the protocol that is going to be used, which I personally believe it's going to be Bitcoin on a BSV implementation, because the other implementations are wrong.
Yeah.
But even that is still early days.
Do you have any projects, like NFT projects at the moment, or is it still just something you're kind of sitting on and waiting to see?
If there is a way of selling limited releases, digital releases, it's something that would definitely interest me. But I look at it as well. You can also sell physical objects, and you basically tie it to the ownership to some hash on the chain that says this physical object is owned by this person, whoever has got the keys or something. And of course, and with that you can tie in all sorts of residuals that get transferred back to your original wallet as it progresses. But I understand that there's still a lot of things that we have to kind of figure out how it really works and plays out as these transfers progress. And it's just the technical part. I think there's still a few things that they need to figure out. All the developers that are kind of working on this. Right. But I've got some things that I would like to create, and I think an NFT will be an interesting way of making those objects more unique.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I see what you're doing on BandCamp. You have like a subscription, and they get access.
Yeah. That's sweet.
15% off on merch, and you got all access to your music and future releases. I kind of that's what I kind of see with NFTs too. Is like
So I think I
doing that with BandCamp.
Yeah, I think BandCamp is the prime place that it's kind of like they need that NFT technology in there, because there is a market that is active, works really well. They do limited releases on CDs and vinyl and even cassettes. I think they also do limited downloads in terms of free downloads, and sometimes sold downloads. Of course, that once the file is sold, there is no someone else can copy it and move it ahead. Of course, once we start accepting that the new realities that digital files do have value attached to them. If you're selling an NFT, it's a different, it's a totally different object from just a regular MP3. But of course, people will be able to listen to it, but they don't necessarily own that particular copy.
And when they do own it, there's actually, they have a lot of incentives, because you can hold on to it, and as the artist becomes more successful, it can increase in value.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to discover.
There is. I mean, I think in relation for what like the Jamify is doing, I think BandCamp is kind of like in a way where things can move to somehow, but I don't even know if anybody at BandCamp is aware of what could be done or not. Yeah. And with the way that this space is currently, these companies, they've got limited, especially now with this crisis, they've got limited capital, and if they allocate the capital to the wrong chain, they just basically blow their opportunity to actually move into the space. Yeah, I think it reminds me of the early days of software, when software was like start becoming a thing, and the companies were kind of developing software, and before they figured out how to develop software that wouldn't take 5 years for them to realize that when they were going to put software on the market it was obsolete.
Yeah.
And they couldn't, there was no way that they could spend so many years or so much capital in developing some software. This was like late 80s. And a lot of businesses blew up and disappeared because of just choosing the wrong path.
Right.
And I think at the moment that is the danger that exists in this new technology, because nobody really knows what to do, because they all comes from the main. I mean, the main solution that the main invention was what Satoshi created with Bitcoin, was a protocol.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else that came afterwards comes from the supposition that Bitcoin is incomplete or is flawed, so we need to create a solution. So all of them are solutions.
Yeah.
When in reality, nobody actually understood the original creation. There was people who kind of helped themselves to the original creation and steered it into a situation that serves their own interests. And now we are in billions of dollars of capital invested in talent and developing solutions that are going in the wrong path, and it's kind of shocking that we arrived at such a place.
I was gonna say, how do you find yourself getting into this BSV space? It seems like you have quite a bit of knowledge on it. Like, how did you find yourself kind of getting so interested into this?
I mean, I've came across Bitcoin when I was living in Ibiza. That was like 2011.
Okay.
Didn't pay at the time. I was I'll go and mine some stuff. I've got computers, but they were moving away from GPUs to some ASICs who were not yet on the market.
Okay.
And then I forgot about it. I was partying in Ibiza and never remember of it. And then I came across it again in 2017, 16 actually, late 16, early 17, and from a friend. And I start researching it, and I caught since then I kind of like followed it. So Craig being exposed as Satoshi, kind of like I told the soup that was all fake. Never looked about it again. And then 2 years ago, a friend of mine, very dear friend of mine that lives out in South Beach, he told me, please pay attention to this because this is happening. And I was, no, that's all, because he wasn't even into crypto at all. But he was like, no, please, you should. And I always had an itch back in 2016, 17, when I first looked into the technology, that the removal of the first scene on a chain rule of the protocol was basically a different protocol. It's just like if you remove that, you remove one of the main functionalities of being able to make payments with zero confirmations, because you can always reverse the payment by sending a new transaction. And that kind of always nagged me in the back. And then the way that it played out with the big blocks, small blocks, everybody, even the people that are on the big blocks camps, they all were kind of bouncing back and forward, depending on who was talking in the industry at the time, in the forums, in the Reddits and all that. There was a lot of interviews going on, podcasts, and people were not all, even the people that are on the maxi side or on a small blocks, they were on a fence. But then out of nowhere, there's like this kind of switch comes in, and everybody goes into the small blocks, and the big blocks are kind of like ostracized and moved into somewhere else. And that, at the time I kind of believed in a small block theory, but still had like this kind of itch of something was not right there, something that this doesn't sound right. And even the people that are small blockers, they still do understand that sooner or later they're going to run out of steam, because there's no chance that they can continue to develop the protocol with the incentive disappearing, because sooner or later the thing. And now there's already some of the top developers talking about creating a permanent inflation, which goes totally against the principles of all the small blockers and the Bitcoin, which is a limited supply. And it's just interesting that I think in the end they're gonna eat each other. Like, we don't even need to do anything, because they're just gonna destroy each other themselves, because they realize that they're just on a path or down the wrong road. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, they had a lot of financial support from players in a world financial market, like the companies that are interested in a payment network, like MasterCard, more well-known investor in a Blockstream, which they didn't want that to be a threat to them, you know, to their business model, and that's the reason why. But they've never been able to resolve they broke the protocol, and they've never been able to fix it. I think they hoped to create an industry and try to do the same thing that happened with even with the moving pictures when the Lumiere brothers invented the moving pictures, and they had trademarked. They had the copyrights of that, and all these people moved to LA to create an industry. By the time the regulators got there, the industry was too big, and they couldn't really do anything. They kind of had to make a deal. I think that's, in a way, that's what the people that are behind BTC hoping to do. That somehow, by the time regulators, everything comes around, they're so big that we have to settle with that chain. But the reality is that they cannot fix the technology, and they've got no other option. While the other one keeps getting built and attracting more and more people who are actually interested in creating new businesses that are impossible to exist with what
it's not profitable.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I like about, like, with Jamify, I've minted some songs onto Jamify, and the minting fees are pennies. Like, it's super cheap. And when I look up how much does it cost to mint on Ethereum and OpenSea, you know, it's like $70 and like $1,000 or something. And the fees are insane.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, they are. The OpenSea, which of course I understand that there's a lot of investment behind it to create where they are now, but they are building it on a platform that cannot scale, and even that now they can actually move that into BSV, running exactly the same code and keeping the history of all their transactions at pennies. So I think we're going to see as the year progresses towards the end of the year, early next year, we're going to see a lot of these businesses transferring the same protocol to BSV, where they can run it at micro pennies.
Isn't there like a company or something that does that will transfer infrastructure onto BSV?
Yeah, it's basically it's called a transpiler. So what it does is actually it doesn't convert the code to run on BSV. What it does, it converts the code, which is Solitude on Ethereum, to S script, which runs on a BSV, and then the S script can be run on BSV. So it's actually more interesting than just transferring the code straight into run on BSV.
I think that's what BSV needs is just entrepreneurs that are creating real businesses that are giving real value.
I think there are some things. I mean, on the gaming side, it's all very young. Like we got Ace Arcade is very interesting, and I think it's going to create a new generation of people who come and play that can earn money. And I think it's not going to be too long before bigger and bigger players are coming in, and then eventually they will end up licensing the protocol and putting it underneath their EA games or whatever.
Yeah.
So people can actually trade, because the marketplace and the trading already exists in those economies, in those games, those communities.
Yeah.
And the same thing with wallets. I mean, people, I keep onboarding people to use hand cash, and they look at it and they can't realize that they can't understand. You just send me less than 1p, and it's already here. I'm next to him, it's already there, and they start seeing the potential of it and start scrambling whatever their field is, or profession or business. They start scrambling of how can I do something with this?
Yeah.
You know, and now of course it will take some time, but I think there's that kind of is happening around the world. People thinking, oh, can I use this to create something? And I think it's one of the reasons why BSV is kind of even immune to all this craziness that is going on with the market, where the kind of like everything collapsed. Is that there is actually real need to use the coins, and it's there is not loads of exposure on all these kind of exchanges because they've been delisted. So they kind of been holding up quite well compared to everybody else.
It's cheap to test and to build, you know?
Yeah.
And the thing about hand cash, which is exciting, you know, they say it's the app store for Bitcoin, or the Bitcoin app store. It's just super user friendly, and I can see, you know, I know there's like some younger kids that are playing on the BSV, you know, on hand cash and playing the games and everything. And I remember when I had my iPod and I started exploring the app store, and I was looking at all the games, I was looking at all, you know, the music, and I feel like that's kind of like what's going to help adoption, is like all these kids are going to get on playing these games and searching the app store, the Bitcoin app store.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just super cool because you know, it's cheap and you can send transactions super fast. So, I mean, that makes me excited. Super cool.
As soon as they're coming, I think sometime this year with off-ramp, where you can off-ramp from the app, which is fundamental. And I think that is going to create even more opportunities for people to just run businesses.
Right.
You know,
when you say off-ramp, just for when other people are listening, what can you explain what off-ramping means?
Off-ramp means that when you want to, let's say, I hire you and so I buy some BSV here, send it to you in hand cash, you get it, and then you need that as dollars. So off-ramping is when you convert that back to dollars in your country. And so basically I can trade with you at a really low cost in terms of transactions and really fast.
Right.
And then this is a manual kind of old school way, because then we can automate this process. We could automate this process. I mean, they've tried to develop this Bitcoin phone, where you basically can use you charge people to call you on whatever it is. It can be tech support, it can be anything. I mean, any sort of business. I look at it in my field. I could hop into people's sessions and fix problems in their mixes, fix problems in their production using and cash wallet, and I get paid by the minute or by the second. And as soon as we finish the call, I've got the money in my account.
That's
that sounds awesome.
That's huge.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, you can do that in any field, anything, mentoring, coaching, anything.
Yeah.
You know.
So to jump back into the music side of things, I want to ask you. So you're a mix engineer as well, right?
Yeah.
Like producer, beat maker, engineer. Do you do mastering too?
Yes.
Cool. What would you say? What are your like go-to plugins? Do you have any like specific, or is it just basic compression, EQ type things, or favorite VSTs?
Yeah, I love plugins. I mean, I love being in a box. I've got loads of. I grew up with machines and tapes and aligning tapes and tones, and I was just worried about playing the tape because it wears down the high frequency on a tape. So I kind of like don't miss any of that. And I think a lot of the technology now in the box is extraordinary. But for me, what I've been fascinated for the last few years is actually a sound designing tool, which is a virtual modular, which is you can run it on is open source. So most of the plugins or the modules are actually free, and you can create these kind of like. It's almost like programming in a way, but you program with it uses a lot of maths, so you kind of uses voltages, and then you add them and use Boolean operators, and you create melodies and kind of a lot of never repeating music, which is very fascinating.
That's
Keep it interesting.
And it's the one that I use is called VCV Rack, and it's incredible.
What's it called?
VCV Rack.
Ooh, cool.
But I like the then on the more traditional way, when I'm doing like kind of like more regular productions for other artists or stuff like that. I like the a lot. I like the new stuff, like new synths that don't exist in the real world, and then I like the recreations of some of the machines that I've got and some that I could never afford to have. So I like a lot of the Arturia stuff, like the Roland stuff.
Yeah.
Spectrasonics is incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many good ones.
I'm an Omnisphere guy.
Yeah, I love Omnisphere, and the Trillion is incredible. But then I like Reveal Sound Spire is so kind of modern and current. It's called the Reveal Sound, and it's called Spire. That's really modern sounding. It's kind of similar to Serum. Serum is really good too.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I like them, so I'm kind of like I end up buying all of them.
Right.
Definitely more than I would ever need, but
Right.
I just like the to use different synths, and then of course on the sound processing, there's loads of them as well, like Sound Toys or even Tide or Plugin Alliance has got a nice collection as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually about to get some Sound Toys, or I'm getting like effects rack or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sound Toys, yeah, it's one of my favorites. I mean, there's no one single production I don't have Sound Toys. There's always something in there.
Yeah, I need to get that.
Yeah, I need to look into that. I'm not
Black Friday. You wait for Black Friday. They're good.
Yeah, let's do it. See, I love VSTs and plugins and stuff.
Yeah.
When you're mixing, let's say you're producing a track, and do you put anything on the master bus when you're mixing a track, or do you bounce it and then master it?
Yeah, I usually depends on what I'm doing, but the more kind of like normal operation would be to have something on a master. So I'm already kind of engineering and composing with some processing in a master, so I can listen to it, and kind of when I take home to listen, I'm listening to it against other stuff. Kind of sounds kind of close to something final, and then it depends on a project. Sometimes I end up taking that out and sending to someone else to master. Sometimes I actually do stems and mix it. Sometimes just do everything in the same project, and the mastering also in the same project. So there's not like one unique approach.
Yeah, you don't have one unique approach.
And it also depends on the clients, because sometimes I've got people come in and they're happy with what they've got. Sometimes they want to see, can we get some more mileage out of this? So they might want to attempt to get someone to mix it or someone to master it. Yeah. Or sometimes whoever is releasing it wants to have the stems and do some mixing and mastering. So there's no like one size fits all.
Do you ever mix hip hop music or any pop or rock?
I've done a few things, but I don't tend to gravitate to a lot of acoustic kind of sound, or like rock would be like more like miking drums and stuff. I don't really venture that often there, but I've done a few things. I've done kind of a bossa nova album out in Asia with some dance records a couple of years ago, and that was totally different kind of experience. Which I had an engineer working with me, a sound assistant. I had a musician, singer, and I was kind of producing old school, so kind of listening to the takes. And I had jazz musicians, so basically they play. If they play 1 hour, you got 1 hour of music.
Yeah.
They're really skilled musicians, and that was very interesting. And then eventually I brought the project with me, did a little bit of tweaking, ended up sending to an engineer friend of mine that's kind of like very versatile in working with recorded mic stuff. So kind of like I was the producer, but was using other people to do a couple of jobs, and then eventually I ended up doing the mastering.
You're going like this.
So yeah.
That's sweet.
Yeah. So, and I did like to be kind of in charge, as opposed to be like the lonely single person. I mean, if you've got someone working with you, you've got one person in the studio, but most of the time that would be just you making the whole thing, and or occasionally, yeah, with someone else. But like that is you in charge of a team is very, very exciting and interesting.
Cool.
So is that kind of where you are right now in your career? Is mostly just kind of like you're kind of overseeing a team, or do you still do a lot of stuff by yourself, or?
Yeah, I do a lot of stuff by myself. I do work a lot of dance records for other DJs, kind of like helping them. They kind of work some ideas on their laptops, and they come to the studio, and I can help them kind of create the vision of where they want to go, because usually either they don't know how to do this or that, or create this sound, or put it together, or what does he actually need. So that's a lot. That's kind of like similar to directing musicians, but in this case, I'm actually playing the parts, because it's all kind of electronic music. Or sometimes they actually play the parts. I open their project and fix whatever it needs to be fixed. That I do that way much more than work on releases on my own, because once I've done that, I kind of get paid, and that I'm happy. If I do release on my own, you need to kind of do all the extra work of trying to promote it, pushing it, doing interviews, and it's time consuming, and I prefer to spend my time making music than promoting the music. So kind of gravitated more towards kind of helping other new upcoming artists to establish themselves.
That's sweet.
Do you have any like favorite house artists that you're looking at right now?
I mean, there's a lot of stuff, but for many years I've always been fascinated by the Romanian sound, kind of minimal tech house sound that they do. It's something that's a favorite of mine. But I don't know. There's a lot of interesting people. I would have to go. I'm not great to kind of with names. Yeah. It's more like modern, current stuff. But I would have to go to my playlist when I DJ and then look at the names and figure out which ones I really like. But it would be difficult to just off the top of my head to think of it or think of one.
Have you heard? You've probably heard of like Flume and like Disclosure.
Yeah. I mean, Disclosure, they're brilliant.
You met them?
No, I've not met them personally, but they are very good. I mean, I like Disclosure. I like Flume. Yeah, I like Fortet or Jamie XX. I mean, there's some really.
Odessa.
Odessa's sweet.
Odessa, I think I know the name. And then you got more from the tech house scene. You've got all that crew from Afterlife. They do a lot of interesting kind of new modern take on trance music.
Yeah.
And you've got Chris Lake, who does really interesting stuff. I mean, there is so many good artists and producers and engineers working.
There's so much good music out there. It's like it's hard to keep up with everything.
And nowadays the barrier to entry is just like it's different. I mean, like if you have a laptop, I mean, like you can start to get your.
You have a laptop and Logic.
Yeah, you can start to get your hands in there and start to try to.
You got DistroKid.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, my son is doing hip hop. That's all he does. He's now turning. Yeah, he's turning 21. I've got a studio just around the corner from where I live. It's like a complex with about 14 rooms where there's lots of different kind of producers and little bands and engineers that go there and use. And he's got a room there with his mate, and he's been doing a lot of like this London hip hop trap kind of sound.
What's your son's name?
He goes under the Silva. I mean, I think it is I think he calls himself the Silver Truth on his Instagram, something
Okay.
The
like
Silver
that.
Truth.
I think so.
Cool.
Yeah,
I mean, that's awesome because I know the UK hip hop and like grime scene is huge right now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can send you a link to his stuff.
Yeah,
and
we'd
the-
love that.
Yeah, I would appreciate that.
Yeah.
So one last question before we wrap things up here. If you had one piece of advice out of all the years you've been in the music industry, what would that one piece of advice be to an artist just getting started?
Don't sign your master rights away.
I love that.
Yeah.
Own your music.
Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah. You don't have to sell them. You can license.
You can license.
Yeah, but against what everybody says, you can actually license it as opposed to surrender and sell it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know?
Gotcha. Awesome, man. Well, appreciate you having you on here.
Thanks for taking the time.
It's very insightful.
Yeah, inspiring.
Thanks for having me.
I'm gonna be playing your music throughout my house. So
We're gonna
yeah,
be
man,
dancing.
moving.
Cool.
Yeah, man. And
Cool.
where do you if you want people to reach you, or do you want to direct people towards like your website, or what links?
Well, the best place for them to go is to Spotify because they listen to my music and makes me some money.
Cool.
Let's do it.
Perfect.
We'll put your links
or check me out on BandCamp.
Okay.
I'm currently uploading all my music there, including stuff that never got released that I don't think is kind of sits nicely on Spotify. So I'm putting up there.
Okay.
I'm slowly uploading because it took me quite some time to put everything on a network drive, like transferring all the files, and then I had an accident. Had to go to a really old backup because I thought I'd lost most of my catalog, and I finally found it on an old time machine backup. So I'm now uploading it slowly, and I've been finding a lot of interesting stuff. So I'm putting it there on BandCamp that I won't be putting on Spotify. So those are the two places really.
Right.
Everything else is like Facebooks and Twitters and Instagram is just nonsense.
Cool. Yeah, well, we'll send people that way. We'll put it in the link in the description.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be following along for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, don't forget to send me. I'll text you about your son because I'm interested.
Yeah, I will do.
Awesome.
I will do. I mean, yeah, I'll send you, and I'll link you up with him because he produces other people and he doesn't show up who they are, but he does a lot of that stuff. So.
Cool.
Oh, cool.
May have to have him on a podcast sometime.
Yeah.
Alright.
That's cool.
Well, have a good one. Enjoy the rest of your evening in the
Thank
UK.
you.
Yeah.
Take
Bye.
care.
Thank you.
Bye bye.